Shalom, Mashpaka. Shalom. Shalom to the whole house of Yasha'al. All 12 tribes worldwide on this Yom. To the elder Ak, Yahuda. To the younger Ak, Ephraim. To the stranger, Agur, Agoyim, who has joined and attached themselves to the house of Yasha'al, who have come out from amongst the nations, who have come out from amongst swine and pigs and dogs, who now no longer being considered a swine or pig or a dog or a goyim, but indeed now being considered a fellow citizen and adopted son, and whereby privy to the same covenants and the same promise and the same inheritance that was given to Yasha'al and to Yasha'al alone. Shalom, shalom to you worldwide, wherever your feet touch the soil on this Yom. Shalom, shalom to you on this Yom. Shalom to you on this Yom. Mashpaka, I've been sent by today with a message regarding the Feast of Dedication. Actually, two messages regarding the Feast of Dedication. This will be part one. Part two will follow shortly thereafter. But I've been sent by today with a message and somewhat of a proclamation with respect to the Feast of Dedication, And along with that message, let me say this. The message is not addressing whether or not we should keep the Feast of Dedication, because we should, but rather how we should keep it, not so much even why we should keep it, even though that may be addressed in this teaching, in this proclamation or message, but primarily to address how we should keep it. So it's not a question in my mind that we should keep it. It's in the text. So we should keep it. But the question is, how should we keep it? This is the prevailing disparity amongst Yah's people, is how we should keep it. And before going on with this teaching, let me lay this disclaimer. And this is the reason that Yah sent me by with this message. There's a bunch of foolishness going on. There is a bunch of foolishness going on with respect to not only this feast, but the other feasts, but all of the other feasts. But this feast, not excluded. There's a bunch of foolishness going on with respect to how should we keep it. There are some in the house of Yasha'al who say that they're Yasha'alites, or Yasha'alim, who are keeping this feast similar to Christmas, which we know, which you should know if you are of the house of Yasha'al. You should know that is pagan. That is a pagan observance. And this set apart feast, I know it's not one of the 7 appointed feasts, but it's still set apart, and the scripture is going to lay that case. But this set apart feast should have nothing in common with the pagans. It should have nothing in common with the pagans. This is a feast of the Yahudim. The Yahudim are set apart people. We are set apart to Yah in spirit and in truth, in righteousness and in truth. And so this feast should have nothing in common with the pagans. Yet there are some keeping this feast like the pagans keep Christmas, putting up lights and exchanging gifts. That's foolishness. There's a lot of foolishness going on with respect to this feast. And I would say this, and this is the truth. This foolishness is going on because the prevailing issue in the house of Yasha'al is that most in the house of Yasha'al are not operating via the Ruach. They have not the Ruach. They're still operating in their flesh. They believe just because they've uncovered their identity, just because, mind you, Yahuwah has uncovered their identity and has begun to show us who we are, that is sufficient enough. That is sufficient enough. Their vain efforts to God Torah without the Ruach, and their changing of names, and wearing of Hebrew garments, and wearing of tzitzits, and wearing of head wraps. this isn't sufficient, but they believe that just because they do this, that they are somehow set apart, that they are somehow set apart, and their offering of worship is somehow ascending the Shamayim as a sweet-smelling aroma into the nostrils of Yahuwah. No, that is not the case. It is a stench in his nostrils because you're giving him strange fire. You're giving him strange fire. That's foolishness. There's a bunch of foolishness going on. A bunch of foolishness going on. Secondly, let me lay this disclaimer. And a bunch of this foolishness that is going on is because many are following a Jewish model. Many are following a Jewish model, not only for this feast, but for the other feasts. Not only are they following the Jewish wrong calendar, but they are following the Jewish model with respect to how to keep Yah's appointed feast. And again, I lump this in as a set apart feast, but not an appointed feast, because we're not commanded to keep it. Albeit we're not commanded to keep it, we should keep it. We should keep it because it's in the text. It's in the text. Nevertheless, many are following the Jewish model. And this is where we get this foolishness from with these 9-pronged menorahs, which is not scriptural, which is not even in the book of Maccabees. Using these 9-pronged menorahs, which is just foolishness. And I call it that. It's foolishness. The menorah of Yah is 7-pronged. It does not change. And the exchanging of gifts and carrying, this is foolishness. This is foolishness and has nothing to do with the spirit of the feast. It has nothing to do with the spirit of the feast. Nevertheless, many are following the Jewish model, and that in itself is a mistake, because whenever we follow the Jewish model, we understand that it is not Ruach inspired. It's not Ruach inspired. 2, we should never allow converts to teach us how to guard any feast. This is what you get when you follow converts. You never allow converts to teach you how to guard Yahuwah's appointed feast that he gave to his set-apart people. And so there's just a bunch of foolishness that's going on. And Yahuwah has sent me by today to address it and to speak through his servant with respect to the spirit of the Feast of Dedication, with respect to the Ruach of the Feast of Dedication, and to show us how we should be keeping it, and to show us how we should be keeping it via the Ruach HaKodesh, who teaches us all things, Nevertheless, I don't want to make this video too long because, again, it's going to be a part 1 and a part 2, and this being part 1, part 2 shortly to follow. But I'm going to begin reading to you from 2 Maccabees, Maccabees, Shini'i, 2 Maccabees, the 10th chapter. I'm going to read verse 1 through 9. Now, the precepts to this text you'll find in 1 Maccabees, the 4th chapter, and you'll also find a mention of dedication, the Ivrit being Hanukkah. Hanukkah simply meaning dedication. This is why this is sometimes called Hanukkah and sometimes called Feast of Dedication, because Hanukkah in the Ivrit indeed means dedication. Hanukkah indeed means dedication. And so the precepts, a couple of precepts to 2 Maccabees, 2 Maccabees, the 10th chapter, verse 1 through 9, you'll find in 1 Maccabees 4, and you'll find it mentioned also in Yahukanan, commonly called John, the 10th chapter, verse 22 through 23. Now, I'm not going to read the precepts. 1 Maccabees 4 has 61 verses. And so for the sake of time, I'm not going to read that. If you want to go back and read that to gain an historical perspective with respect to the Feast of Dedication, and to gain a historical perspective, and so as to add better context as to why we keep it, I encourage you to go back and read 1 Maccabees, the 4th chapter. But for the sake of time, because I'm making 2 videos, this is going to be a part 1 and a part 2. I'm not going to read that today. You're going to have to do your own homework. And so now, reading from 2 Maccabees, the 10th chapter, beginning at verse 1, reading down through verse 9, we read, Now Yehuda Maccabee and his company Yahuwah guiding them, recovered the Haiko, and the city. But the altars which the heathen had built in the open street, and also the chapels, they pulled down. And having cleansed the Haiko, they made another altar, and striking stones, they took fire out of them, and offered a sacrifice after 2 years, and set forth incense and lights and showbread. When that was done, they fell flat down and besought Yahuwah that they might come no more into such troubles. But if they sinned any more against him, that he himself would chasten them with compassion, and that they might be delivered unto the blasphemous, and that they may not be delivered unto the blasphemous and barbarous nations. Now upon the same day that the strangers profaned the Haiko, on the very same day it was ordained again, even the 5 and the 20th day of the same month, the 5 and 20th day of the 9th month. And you will find this in 1 Maccabees 4. It is always kept on the 25th day of the 9th month. And we're going to address even that further down below. On the 5 and 20th day of the same month, which is Chaklev, and they kept the 8 days with gladness, as in the feast of Kukut. As in the feast of Kukut. This is very integral. As in the feast of Kukut. Remembering that not long before, they had held the feast of Kukut, when as they had wandered in the mountains and dens like beasts. Therefore they bore branches and fair bowls and palms also, and sang psalms and unto him that had given them good success and cleansing his place. They ordained also by common statute and decree that every year those days should be kept of the whole nation of the Yahudim, as this was the end of Antiochus called Epiphanes. As this was the end of Antiochus called Epiphanes. And so just to give you just a brief history, a brief background, for those who don't know, this is during the period of the third beast, commonly called Greece, and it talks of the atrocities. It speaks of some of the atrocities. Well, Maccabees speaks in depthly of the atrocities caused by the Greeks, by the barbarous Greeks. But in this particular instance, we find Yahuda Maccabee and a host of Yahudim fighting a multitude of Greeks who had conquered Jerusalem and who had defiled the Haiko of Yahuwah, who had made it unclean with their abominable offerings. They were offering swines and pigs inside the Haiko. They had erected statues in its court, and they were sacrificing pigs to these idols in the Haiko of YAHUAH'S. And they had defiled the Hekel. They had defiled it. They had severely defiled it. It was unkept. There were weeds growing all around it. It was unkept. They were defiling even the altar of YAHUAH'S by sacrificing unclean animals on the altar of YAHUAH'S. Hence enters Yahuwah Maccabee, who then goes about the business of delivering Jerusalem and delivering the Haiko of YAHUAH'S. And you'll find this again in 1 Maccabees, the 4th chapter. Upon coming upon the Haiko in Jerusalem, they tore their clothes because of the defiled nature and the defiled state that the Haiko was left in. And they rent their clothes, they tore their clothes because of the defiled state that the Haiko was left in. And so they then went about the business of cleansing the Hekel and rededicating the Haiko. They tore down stones. They tore down the defiled altar place, the defiled altar, and they rebuilt it. And they went about the business of rededicating and recleansing the Ahiko after they had recaptured it from the hands of the heathen nations. After they had captured it from the hands of the heathen nations. One thing that you need to understand is that it is written in Torah that this, again, we read in 2 Maccabees, the 10th chapter, that it was kept, that the feast was kept as kukut. And so that's one point of note that we need to understand when we're keeping dedication, the Feast of Dedication, that it should be kept as kukut, absent the booths and absent the Shabbat days, because this is wintertime. You don't go out and live in a booth in wintertime. You don't go out and build a booth, a kukut, and a kuka, a sukkah, and go out and live in a booth during wintertime. And so we have to be led by the Ruach. And so it's kept as sukkot, absent the sukkah, and absent the Shabbat days, the first day and the 8th day, and absent the Shabbat days. But it should resonate in you that it's kept as sukkot, so as to show you the set-apart nature of the feast. The set-apart nature of the feast. Moreover, it is written in the Torah when the Ha'iko in the wilderness was erected, that prescribed in Torah that they were to dedicate the Ha'iko and the Kahuna and the priesthood simultaneously for 7 days. For 7 days. And so this is a precept, and this is a foreshadowing even of Kukut, even of Sukkot. And we'll get into that further down. I don't want to get ahead of myself, but that was a foreshadowing, because the Ha'iko was, and the priesthood and the Kahana was dedicated for 7 days, and on the 8th day they were dedicated. The Heko was dedicated, and the Kahuna was ordained. And again, we'll get further into that down below. And so this is ordained in Torah, that the Ha'iko has to be dedicated, or has to be cleansed for 7 days. For 7 days. And again, and I don't want to get ahead of myself, and we're going to read this down below, but this is why Shaloma dedicated the first Ha'iko in Jerusalem on Kukut, doing Kukut, because this is what the dedication of the tent of appointment in the wilderness pointed towards. It pointed towards Kukut. And thus, when Yahuda Maccabees, when they rededicated the Ha'iko after it had been defiled, they kept the festival as keeping Sukkot, as they were keeping Sukkot. Again, absent the sukkahs, the booths, and absent the Shabbat days. And so they kept it for 8 days with myrrh and with gladness, as keeping the feast of Sukkot. And again, we're going to get further into this down below. But I'm not going to even address, family, I'm not going to address the surface meaning of keeping the Feast of Dedication, because our Ak and our Kuf only know the surface meaning, because they have not the Ruach and cannot discern the Sud meaning of Sukkot and Feast of Dedication, which again are synonymous, because this feast is kept like the Feast of Sukkot. It is kept as the Feast of Sukkot. And so again, absent the Shabbat days and absent the Sukkahs. And so they lack the Ruach HaKodesh, who him alone can teach us the deeper, mysterious meaning, or the mystery or hidden thing behind why we keep all of the feasts and why we obey Torah in and of itself. They can't discern it, so they only know the surface meaning, which your flesh can easily discern. Your flesh can easily discern the surface meaning, but your flesh cannot discern the sud, which is the mystery of the hidden thing. And so there's enough foolishness going around with respect to the surface meaning, and that's where we get all this disparity and all this foolishness with respect to putting up lights, like it's like akin to putting up lights on a Christmas tree and passing out presents, because they have not the ruach and they have not discernment, and and without the ruach, you can never understand the mystery of the hidden thing. You can never understand the sud. You can never understand the sud. So I've given you a brief explanation of the pashat. In other words, the surface meaning of why we keep the Feast of Dedication. I didn't go into detail, but you can read 1 Maccabees 4 to gain a better context of that. So I've given you a brief explanation of that, but now we're going to go into the sud. We're going to go into why it is kept, what this feast points towards, what it points towards, and how we should keep it in spirit and in truth. In other words, how we are supposed to keep it in accordance with the mind of Yahuwah. In accordance with the mind of Yahuwah. And so beginning to unravel this onion, we're going to begin reading in Matif Yahu, commonly called Matthew, the 24th chapter, verse 1 through 2. Verse 1 through 2. Beginning at verse 1, it reads, "And going out, Yahusha went away from the set-apart place, and his taught ones came near to point out the buildings of the set-apart place." Hear me. The dwelling place. The same dwelling place that Yahukanan Maccabees and his company rededicated. That too was the second Ha'ikal. Just as this is the second Ha'ikal that we're talking about, that too was the second Ha'ikal that they had rededicated. So reading here, the very same Ha'ikal. So reading here again, "And going out, Yahusha went away from the set-apart place, and his taught ones came near to point out to him the buildings of the set-apart place. And Yahusha said to them, 'Do you not see all these? Listen, truly I say to you, not one stone shall be left here upon another at all, which shall not be thrown down.'" Which shall not be thrown down. Now, history tells us that he was speaking Nabah, a Nabuah, commonly called prophecy, with respect to the destruction of the second Ha'ikal, commonly called the abomination of desolation, the abomination and the destruction of the second Ha'ikal. He was Nabuah about its destruction, but there's deeper things here in these words with respect to what the Hamashiach is saying. There is deeper meaning here with respect to what the Hamashiach is saying. Now, the very reason that the Hamashiach spoke these words with respect to the throwing down and the abomination and the destruction of the second Ha'ikal was because he himself came to fulfill its use. He came to fulfill the need for it, rather. He came to fulfill the need of it. His death, burial, and resurrection made the existence or the need of a physical hekel, it made it obsolete. This made it obsolete. And we're going to get deeper into this. It made it obsolete. And so he is speaking Nabuah here about his destruction because it had to be moved out of the way. The physical hekel had to be moved out of the way because it was, and we're gonna read some texts that are going to bear witness to what is being spoken, but it has never been Yahuwah's will to and his desire to dwell in Ha'ikals made with hands, but it has always been his desire to dwell in Ha'ikals not made with hands. It has always been his desire to dwell in the Ha'ikal of the human heart, And so that building had to be moved out of the way. It had to be moved out of the way. Indeed, the building, the physical building of the Ha'ikal was merely a foreshadowing of this hekel, of this dwelling place, of the dwelling place of the human heart. It was merely a foreshadowing of us. It was merely a foreshadowing of us. And so it had to be destroyed. It had to be torn down. And so that this hekel, so that the hekel of the human heart could be erected, which is the place where he wanted to dwell all alone, and which is the place in which the physical hekel was a foreshadowing of. And so reading here in another precept or in another witness, we turn now to Yahukanan or John, the 16th chapter, verse 1 through 11. Reading here, it says, "These words I have spoken to you so that you do not stumble. They shall put you out of the congregation, but an hour is coming when everyone who kills you shall think he is rendering service to Elohim. And this they shall do to you because they did not know the Father nor me. But I have said these words to you so that when the hour comes, you remember that I told them to you. And these words I did not say to you at the beginning, for I was with you. But now I go away to him who sent me. And not one of you asks me, where are you going? Because I have said these words to you, grief has filled your heart. But I say the truth to you. It is better for you that I go away. For if I do not go away, listen, the helper shall not come to you at all. But if I go, I shall send him to you. And having come, he shall convict the world concerning sin and concerning righteousness and concerning judgment, concerning sin because they do not believe in me, concerning righteousness because I go to my Father, and you see me no more, concerning judgment because the ruler of this world is judged. He is judged. And so again, we're going to get deeper into this with some more context and some more scriptures, but we see that the Ha'ikal at Jerusalem, it had to be torn down. First of all, we need to understand this, that the Ha'ikal in Jerusalem and the tent of appointment in the wilderness, not only was it a foreshadowing, not only was it a foreshadowing of the Ha'ikal of the human heart, but it symbolized Yahuwah dwelling in the midst of his people, because indeed in the Ha'ikal, which was made to the exact specifications which Moshe had seen on Mount Sinai, the Ha'ikal was built so that Yahuwah would have a place to dwell in the midst of his people. And so it symbolized Yahuwah dwelling in the midst of his people. When the nations saw the temple of Ha'ikal, they knew that Yahuwah dwelt in the midst of his people. Indeed, this is still the symbol and the testimony. This is still how the nations know that we are Yahuwah's people, because he still dwells in the midst of his people. He still dwells in the midst of his people. Nevertheless, both the tent of appointment and the first and the second Ha'ikal, again, were symbols that Yahuwah dwelt in the midst of his people. And indeed, they were edifices in which he dwelled, showing that he dwelled in the midst of his people. But again, these were mere foreshadowings. They were mere foreshadowings and representations of the Ha'ikal of the human heart. They were merely representations and foreshadowings of us, of this dwelling place. And so again, the Ha'ikal had to be torn down. It had to be moved out of the way. Yahusha had to come to fulfill what he fulfilled in terms of taking upon our uncleansed, taking upon our curses, and taking upon our sins, and restoring us back to right ruling with YAHUAH'S. And after this was accomplished, he then ascent to Shamayim, and then sent his spirit back to dwell in the Ha'iko of the human heart. Once this took place, the Ha'iko was rendered obsolete. The building made with hands was then rendered obsolete. It was then rendered obsolete again. Even the Levitical priesthood, even the Levitical priesthood was rendered obsolete because it was a mere representation. Hear me. The Levitical priesthood was put in place to teach a nation of Kahanim, how to be Kahan. Because it was never Yahuwah's desire for Yasha'al to be a nation under priests. It was always his desire for Yasha'al to be a nation of Kahanim. And so they were put in place to show a nation of Kahanim how to be Kahanim. When our ancestors left Mitzrayim, he wanted to ordain a people. He wanted to ordain a kahuna, a priesthood, to be kahanim to the nations. But because shortly after our ancestors came out of Mitzrayim, came out of bondage, came out of the land of sin, and went to Mount Sinai, and no sooner than Masha went up to Mount Sinai, they began to threaten Aharon, to make them a false mighty one, to make them an ox, an alaf, the symbol for alaf is ox. So they wanted a symbol of Yahuwah, and so this is why they built an ox, or this is why he made an ox, because he is the alaf and the tau. And so they made a golden calf in the image of Yahuwah, who is the alaf, and the symbol for alaf, the thing that represents alaf is an ox, which ultimately represents power. Nevertheless, because Masha took too long, you know the story, they threatened Aharon to build them or to make them a golden calf, an ox, in the image of Yahuwah. The text goes on to say that people sat down to eat and drink and then got up to play. And so shortly after they left Mitzrayim, they entered into sin. In other words, shortly after being delivered from sin, because Mitzrayim is representative of sin, of bondage. Shortly after being delivered from sin, they went right back into sin. And so this, again, is why we keep the Feast of Unleavened Bread. This is why we keep the Feast of Unleavened Bread. Unleavened mean being representative of righteousness, being representative of living a righteous life. And so we keep the Feast of Unleavened Bread after leaving sin, after leaving Mitzrayim, to remind us now that you don't go back into sin after being delivered from sin. You don't go back into leaving. You don't go back into leaving after being delivered from leaving. Now you are to make yourself unleavened vessels. Now you are to make yourselves unleavened vessels and not go back into sin. And so this is the reason for keeping the Feast of Unleavened Bread in the first place. But nevertheless, our ancestors, shortly after leaving sin, shortly after leaving Mitzrayim, this is, again, I have to build this to lay a foundation, but this is why the blood was applied to the doorposts, the blood of the lamb, which is a foreshadowing of Yahusha, which is a foreshadowing of Yahusha, which is a foreshadowing of his slaughtering. Those who had the blood smeared upon their doorposts were what? Were delivered from sin. What is the wages of sin? The wages of sin is death. And so everyone who was living in sin, who was living in Mitzrayim, who did not have the blood smeared upon their doorposts, were not delivered from sin, which means they ultimately were not delivered from death, because the wages of sin is death, as it is written in the first chapter of Mativ Yahu. And you will name him Yahusha, because why? He will deliver his people from their sins. And so our ancestors, shortly after being delivered from sin, being delivered from bondage, being delivered from Egypt, or Mitzrayim, went right back into sin at the base of Mount Sinai when they forced Aharon to make them a golden calf. And so then they went from being a nation of Kahanim, which was Yahuwah's purpose for us, to being a nation under Kahanim, to being a nation under Kahanim. But we see, however, when Yahusha met Yahukanan, Yahukanan the immerser, commonly called John the Baptist being a Kahan, a Levitical Kahan, a Levitical Kahan. We see here in this meeting that we see an end to the Levitical priesthood, or Levim Kahana, and the beginning of a Kahuna in the order of Melchizedek. In the order of Melchizedek. And so in Yahusha, we are now once again a nation of Kahan, a nation of Kahanim, and not a nation under Kahanim or Kahan. Hallelujah. Hallelujah. And so it was never his desire to dwell in houses made with hands. It has always been his desire to dwell in the ha'iko of the human heart, in the ha'iko of the human heart. And so the ha'iko now has been made obsolete because a new ha'iko has been erected, and the Luim Kihuna has been made obsolete because now in Yahusha, we are now once again a nation of Kahan, and not a nation under Kahan, and not a nation under Kahan. Another witness here, reading in John, Yahukanan, the 2nd chapter, verse 13 through 19, we read here, and the Pesach of the Yahudim was near, and Yahusha went up to Jerusalem, and he found in the set-apart place those selling oxen and sheep and doves, and the money changers sitting. And having made a whip of cords, he drove them all out of the set-apart place with the sheep and the oxen, and poured out the money changers, coins, and overturned the tables. And he said to those selling doves, "Take these away. Do not make the house of my Father a house of merchandise." And his taught ones remembered that it was written, the adore for your house has eaten me up. And the Yahudim answered and said to him, What sign do you show to us, since you are doing these? Yahusha answered and said to them, Destroy this dwelling place, and in 3 days I shall raise it. And in 3 days I shall raise it. And you see, not unlike now, they didn't have the Ruach, so they had no idea what he was talking about. They had no idea that it was never Yahuwah's desire to dwell in a dwelling place made with hands. It has always been his desire to dwell in the dwelling place of the human heart. This has always been his desire, and it has never been his desire for us to be a nation under Kahan, but to be a nation of Kahan, so that we are a nation of Kahan to the nations, and so that we can be living Torahs to the nations, and so that we can be living lights to the nations, and so that through us, through his nation of Kahanan, or Kahanim, he will then reconcile the rest of the nations back to himself. You see, it is us. We are his servants. It is us. We are his Kahanim, and he has given us the assignment to teach the nations Torah. To teach the nations Torah. He is not giving this assignment to converts. He is giving this assignment to his people. You see, this is why we're in the predicament that we're in now. This is why that our people are observing the feast of dedication of Hanukkah with foolishness. with foolishness. They are observing it the way converts observe it. They are observing it the way converts observe it, and there is no ruach in it. There is the inspiration of the ruach is not in it. The inspiration of the ruach is not in it. Nevertheless, and again, in addition, this is why many in the house of Yasha'al who are still in prison and entrapped in these Christian churches, this is why they keep Christmas, because they're listening to the mouths of converts. They have listened to the mouths of converts and of heathen. We are his servants. Yasha'al, we are his servants. We are his nation of Kahanim, and we have been given the assignment of teaching the nations Torah. Nevertheless, Yahusha makes it plain here that we are the dwelling place. We are the dwelling place. That the Ha'ikal was merely a foreshadowing of us. And this is why it had to be moved out of the way. And this is why the Levitical Kahana had to be moved out of the way. And this is why there's no more animal sacrifices, because even that Yahusha fulfilled. He even fulfilled that. He made animal offerings obsolete because they pointed towards him. He made the Levine Kahana obsolete because they indeed pointed towards us as being his Kahan. And he made the Ha'ikal obsolete because indeed we are his Ha'ikal. And the Ha'ikal, both the tent of appointment and the first and second Ha'ikal, pointed towards us. It pointed towards us. We're going somewhere with this. We're going somewhere. Another witness we read in Acts, the 7th chapter, verse 44 through 51. Reading here, it says, the tent of witness with our fathers in the wilderness, as he appointed, instructing Masha to make it according to the pattern that he had seen, which our fathers, having received it in turn, also brought with Yahusha into the land possessed by the nations which Elohim drove out before the face of our fathers. Until the days of Dawood, who found favor before Elohim, and asked to find a dwelling place for the Elohim of Yaqub, but Shalama built him a house. However, listen, all Al-Yum does not dwell in dwellings made with hands, as the Nabi says, the Shamayim is my throne, and the earth and the Aratz is my footstool. What house shall you build for me, says Yahuwah? Or what is the place of my rest? Has my hand not made all these? Has my hand not made all these? You stiff-necked and uncircumcised in heart and ears, you always resist the set-apart spirit. As your fathers did, you do also. As your fathers did, you also do. You also do. So he doesn't dwell in Ha'ikals made with hands. It was never his desire to dwell in Ha'ikals made with hands. Those Ha'ikals were merely foreshadowings again of us, of him dwelling in the midst of his people, of him dwelling in the midst of his Ha'ikal, in the Ha'ikal of the human heart. The same way he dwelled in those Ha'ikals, which symbolized Yahuwah dwelling in the midst of his people, he now dwells in the Ha'ikal of the human heart. And not unlike them, when they sinned, when they profaned the place, his presence left. And so if we sin, likewise, if we grieve the Ruach HaKodesh, the gift of the Ruach HaKodesh in which he has given us, he will also leave. And then we will no longer have proof that we are his people. The proof that we are his people is that he dwells in the midst of his people. And if he is not dwelling in the midst of you, you are not his. You are not his. We're going to address this further, probably in the second video. But I had to make that point. So nevertheless, Stephanos here is quoting from the Nabi Yashayahu, who is Nabuah prophesying, a Nabiim rather, prophesying about a future Ha'ikal. As we read here in Isaiah Yashayahu, the 66th chapter, verse 1 through 2. And this is whom Stephanos is quoting. It reads here, thus said Yahuwah, the Shamayim on my throne, and the earth, Aratz, is my footstool. Where is this house that you build for me? And where is this place of my rest? And all these my hand has made, and all these that exist, declares Yahuwah. Yet to such a one I look, on him who is poor and bruised of spirit, and who trembles at my word. Now, those of you who are astute and students of Scripture, you understand that this is close to Yashayahu, the 66th chapter, about the renewal of the Shamayim and Aretz. But even this is a future Nabu'ah with respect to the Ha'iko of the human heart. And we're going to get more into that down below. We don't have much more to cover, but we're going to get more into that down below. But this indeed is a future Nabu'ah stating that we can't build a house big enough to contain him. We cannot build a house big enough to contain Yahuwah Al-Yum. The Shamayim is his throne, and the earth is his footstool. You see, this is how he remains on his throne, yet simultaneously dwells in the hearts of each and every one of his people. He dwells in us while simultaneously sitting on his throne. You can't contain him in a building. You cannot contain Yahuwah Al-Yum in a building. And so while he is sitting on his throne right now, he is simultaneously dwelling in those who have his set apart spirit. All over the Aretz, all over the Aratz. He's dwelling in us at the same time. At the same time. And so not one mere building can contain him. He never wanted to dwell in a building because a building can't contain him. It was merely a foreshadowing for us to show us to show us the workings of the Ha'iko, because we are still to operate with respect to the workings of the Ha'iko, with respect to the remission of sin. We're still to go to the door of the Ha'iko, to the door of the Ha'iko in Shamayim, in which Yahushua HaMashiach is Kahan Gadol. We're still to go to the door of the Ha'iko when we fall, when we sin, with our offering. The offering is belief in the offering of the body of the HaMashiach, going to the door of the Hekel with confession, with a broken and contrite heart, bound before the door of the Hekel, confessing our sins so that we may obtain forgiveness. So the workings of the Ha'iko still goes on. You see, the Ha'iko, the earthly Ha'iko, has not so much been done away with, and I say this for a reason, with respect to the ceremonial law, which was here again as a taskmaster, as a schoolmaster, to teach us the workings of the Ha'iko, to teach us how it works. And so the ceremonial law, what is called the ceremonial law, with respect to animal sacrifice, with respect to the Levitical priesthood, with respect to the Ha'iko, has not so much been done away with, but rather it has been moved to the Shamayim. It has been moved to the Shamayim. And so the same things that took place at the earthly Ha'iko still takes place in Shamayim. And if you don't know the workings which the schoolmaster, which the ceremonial law taught us, then you don't know the workings of the Ha'iko in Shamayim. You don't know it. You don't know it. You don't understand it. Nevertheless, in terms of the earthly Ha'iko, he never wanted a physical building. He's always wanted the hearts of man. He's always wanted the dwelling place of the human heart. As we read here in 2 Corinthians, the 6th chapter, verse 14 through 18. Do not become unevenly yoked with unbelievers. For what partnership has righteousness and lawlessness? And what fellowship has light with darkness? And what agreement has Messiah with wickedness? Or what part does a believer have with an unbeliever? And what union, hear me, has the dwelling place of Elohim with idols? For you are a dwelling place of the living Elohim. As Elohim has said, I shall dwell in them and walk among them, and I shall be their Elohim, and they shall be my people. Therefore come out from among them and be separate, says Yahuwah, and do not touch what is unclean, and I shall receive you. And I shall be a father to you, and you shall be sons and daughters to me, says Yahuwah al Shaddai. Says Yahuwah al Shaddai. Says Yahuwah the Almighty. Says Yahuwah the Almighty. I want to point out something here. It says, therefore come out from among them and be separate, says Yahuwah, and do not touch what is unclean. How do we know what is clean and what is unclean? The Torah teaches us to make a distinction between the clean and the unclean. And this is very significant because he says if we touch what is unclean, that if we do not touch what is unclean, then he will receive us. This is very significant because whenever our ancestors became unclean, they were what? They were separated from the Ha'iko. They could not come inside the Ha'iko. They could not come near the dwelling place, which does what? Which symbolizes that they are separated from Yahuwah. They are separated from Yahuwah. Indeed, if they became unclean, they had to go without the camp. They had to be separated from his people and separated from the Ha'iko, which is symbolic of them being separated from him because what? Why? Because he dwells in the midst of his people. And so in like manner, if we continue in uncleanness and not making a distinction between the clean and the unclean, we too are separated from him and his people because he will withdraw his spirit. I didn't say it. The text says it. It says, come out from among them and be separate, says Yahuwah, and do not touch what is unclean, and I shall receive you. You see, Shaul, he taught Torah. Irrespective of the misunderstandings of some who blaspheme him and the misunderstandings of Christians, they misunderstand him, they misquote him because they don't understand Torah. He taught Torah. He taught Torah. Nevertheless, if we touch what is unclean, if we become unclean, no different than our ancestors who had to be, when they became unclean, had to go outside of the camp, had to be without the camp, meaning that they were separated from Yah's people and meaning that they were separated from his presence because his Ha'iko dwelt in the midst, was in the midst of his people where he dwelt. And so again, if one is still engaging in that which is unclean, then neither does he dwell in the midst of them, and neither are they a part of his people. Neither are they a part of his people, as it is written in 1 John that Yahuwah is light and in him is no darkness at all. If we claim fellowship with him, yet walk in darkness, we lie and do not live by the truth. But if we walk in the light as he is in the light, then we have fellowship with him and we have fellowship with his people. Darkness being Torahlessness, darkness being lawlessness, darkness being unrighteousness. Nevertheless, we see that Yahuwah desires to dwell in the midst of his people. He is, and in that saying, he was speaking a foreshadowing of not some Ha'iko made with hands, but rather talking about a future time when he was going to dwell in the hearts of men. Because again, it was never his desire, as we have read in the precepts, to dwell in dwelling places made with hands because they can't contain him. It was always his desire to dwell in the Ha'iko of the human heart. Nevertheless, Shaul there, again, he teaches Torah. He was a Rabbi. But what he was quoting, a precept to that, or a witness to that, the precept rather, to that comes to us from Exodus, the 29th chapter, verse 44 through 46, where we read, and I shall set apart, listen, the tent of appointment and the slaughter place, and Aharon and his sons I set apart to serve as Kahanim to me. And I shall dwell in the midst of the children of Yasha'al, and shall be their Elohim. And they shall know that I am Yahuwah their Elohim, who brought them up out of the land of Mashraim to dwell in their midst. I am Yahuwah, their Elohim. Now in Shama'ut, or Exodus, the 29th chapter, verse 44 through 46, he says here, I am going to dwell in the tent of appointment. I'm going to dwell in the midst of my people, and I am going to be their Elohim, and they are going to be my people. Now, when you read Shaul, his writings, you have to understand now that Shaul in the Brith Kadashah is speaking in Sud. He's speaking in Sud language. He's not speaking in the surface. He's speaking in Sud. And so unless you have the Ruach HaKadosh, who teaches us all things and teaches us the Sud, in other words, the mystery of the hidden thing, you're not going to get Shaul. You're either going to call him blasphemous, you're either going to call him blasphemous or a son of perdition. I've heard all these. Or you're just going to misquote him entirely. You're going to misquote him entirely. But Shaul understood the Sud in Shama'ut chapter 29, verse 44 through 46, when it says that he was going to dwell in the tent of appointment, and he was going to dwell in the midst of his people, and he was going to be their Elohim, and that they were going to be his people. He understood that Yahuwah, just as Stephanos mentioned in the 7th chapter of Acts of Ma'asai, that it was never his desire to dwell among his people or to dwell among his people, but rather to dwell in his people. And so Shaul is quoting Shama'ut, or Exodus, the 29th chapter, verse 46. But he says it in this way because he understood the meaning of it. He understood the meaning. Why? Because he had the set apart spirit. And it goes on. I'm going to read just a little bit of what he's saying. What does a believer have with an unbeliever? And what union has the dwelling place of Elohim with idols? For you are a dwelling place of the living Elohim, as Elohim has said. Now he's quoting down below. Shama'ut, the 29th chapter, verse 44 through 46. But he's quoting it now from a Sud perspective, meaning the mystery or the hidden thing. I shall dwell in them and walk among them, and I shall be their Elohim. Listen, I shall dwell in them, not amongst them, as it read down below. I shall dwell in them and walk among them, and I shall be their Elohim, and they shall be my people. And so he understood that in the language of Shama'ut, or Exodus 29 through 44, and I'm going to read that again, and I shall set apart the tent of appointment and the slaughter place, and Aharon and his sons I set apart to serve as Kahanim for me, and I shall dwell in the midst of the children of Yasha'al, and shall be their Elohim, and they shall know that I am Yahuwah, their Elohim, who brought them up out of the land of Mashraim to dwell in their midst. I am Yahuwah, their Elohim. So Shaul, he's speaking in the Sud, and he understood it. He understood it to mean that the Ha'ikal, the tent of appointment in the wilderness, was merely a foreshadowing of the dwelling place of the human heart. In fact, if you don't have the Ruach HaKodesh, again, you're not going to understand the Sud, the mystery of the hidden things in Scripture, because only the Ruach HaKodesh can reveal them to us. He alone can reveal them to us. If you don't have him, you're only going to understand the surface, and then you're going to be keeping the feast of dedication of Hanukkah foolishly, following a Jewish model, which is not Ruach inspired. Having a 9-pronged menorah and stringing up lights like you're celebrating Christmas and passing out presents. This is foolishness. The Feast of Dedication has nothing to do with that. It has nothing to do with that. Absolutely nothing to do with that. Again, as we read in 2 Maccabees, the 10th chapter, it is supposed to be kept as Kukut, as the Feast of Sukkot. It is supposed to be kept like the Feast of Sukkot, absent the Shabbats and absent building a sukkah, because, it's wintertime. You don't go build a sukkah in the wintertime. Again, you've got to be led by the Ruach in these things. You've got to be led by the Ruach. I'm going to read a couple more texts, and then we're going to get to the foundation where we're laying the foundation. But then we're going to get to the sud of how we should keep the Feast of Dedication. How we should keep the Feast of Dedication. So reading now from Dabri Ha Yamin Bat in that 2 Chronicles, the 7th chapter, verse 1 through 10. We read here, and when Shalama had ended praying, fire came down from the Shamayim and consumed the ascending offering and the slaughterings, and the esteem of Yahuwah filled, listen to me, filled the house. And the Kohanim were unable to enter the house of Yahuwah because the esteem of Yahuwah had filled the house of Yahuwah. And all the children of Yasha'al saw how the fire came down and the esteem of Yahuwah on the house, and they bowed their faces to the ground on the pavement and did obseance, or they did reverence and gave thanks to Yahuwah, saying, for he is good, for his loving commitment is everlasting. And the sovereign and all the people slaughtered slaughterings before Yahuwah. And sovereign and Malak Shalama slaughtered a slaughtering of 22,000 bulls and 120,000 sheep. Thus the sovereign and all the people dedicated, hear me, dedicated the house of Elohim. And the Kohanim were standing over their duties, and the Luim with instruments of the song of Yahuwah, which sovereign Daud had made, to give thanks to Yahuwah, saying, for his loving commitment is everlasting, whenever Daud prays by their hand. And the Kohanim were blowing trumpets of shofars before them, and all Yasha'al were standing. And Shalama set apart the middle of the courtyard that was in front of the house of Yahuwah, for there he made ascending offerings and the fat of the shalom offerings, because the bronze slaughter place which Shalama had made was not able to contain the ascending offerings and the grain offerings and the fat. And Shalama at that time observed the festival 7 days, and all Yasha'al with him a very great assembly, from the entrance of Hamad to the Wadi of Matzraim. And listen, and on the 8th day they held an assembly, for they performed the dedication of the slaughter place, 7 days, and the festival 7 days. And on the 23rd of the 7th new month, and we understand that this is Sukkot, kept just like the Feast of Dedication, he sent the people away to their tents, rejoicing and glad of heart for the goodness that Yahuwah had done for Daud and for Shalama and for his people Yasha'al. And for his people Yasha'al. And so, my family, what Yahuwah wants us to know is that we are his dwelling place. We are his dwelling place. We are his dwelling place. And during the Feast of Dedication, we should be rededicating this ha'ikal, or dedicating this ha'ikal in the same way the physical ha'ikal was dedicated. And in the same way the physical ha'ikal was cleansed, in the same way that the instruments and the slaughter place and things were anointed, we should be anointing this dwelling place. In the same way that there was slaughterings being done to dedicate and to set apart place and the altar, we should be that slaughter offering. We should be that slaughter offering during the Feast of Dedication. We should be dying daily during this Feast of Dedication to sin. We should be dying daily as a slaughter offering to sin during these 7 days. And on the 8th day, celebrating with myrrh and gladness. Indeed, we should celebrate the whole feast with myrrh and gladness. But we are that dwelling place. We are that defiled dwelling place. Each and every one of us have been defiled by the heathens. Each and every one of us has been defiled by the heathen nations. Thus he declares, come out of her, my people, lest you suffer in her sins and receive of her plagues. Each and every one of us have been defiled by the heathen nations, and each and every one of us need to be rededicating these high equals during the feast of dedication, lying on his slaughter place, presenting ourselves as a living offering, set apart and acceptable to him, praying to him that he would teach us to not be conformed to this world, but to be renewed by the transforming of our minds, that we may prove what is that acceptable and perfect will of Elohim. We are the dwelling place, and we are that offering that should be dying daily. We should be praying that he would send down fire from Shamayim to consume the fat in these hekels, to consume the fat on the altar. In other words, to consume the impurities, to consume the unclean things in us, so that we are a clean hekel, so that we are an acceptable dwelling place in which he can dwell in fullness. And just like when the hekel was dedicated during the time of Shalama, we should be asking him in like manner to fill us. As he filled that hekel, that ha'ikel, we should be praying to him during the feast of dedication for him as he cleanses us, as he rededicates this filthy ha'ikel to him, and that he purifies and cleanses it and consumes the fat. We should be asking him afterwards to fill us. To fill us such that we cannot stand like the Kohanim could not stand on that day. On that day. Another thing that you need to understand, and we're going to shut this down, is that again, everything has a sud meaning. And if you don't have the Ruach, then you don't understand the sud meaning, because only the Ruach can teach you the sud meaning. Only the Ruach can teach you the sud meaning. The sud meaning. Again, I don't really want to touch on the surface of it, but if you don't have a menorah, I encourage you to purchase a 7-prong menorah, because during dedication, commonly called Hanukkah, the menorah is lit at evening time. This is symbolic of the Kohanim, who traditionally went into the ha'ikel each evening to ensure that the menorah, that the light of the menorah continued to burn. Because indeed, the menorah is the symbol, the sign of Yahuwah. He is the living menorah. He is the eternal light that is never extinguished. And so the command in Torah was given that the menorah was to never be extinguished. It was to never be extinguished because he can never be extinguished, because he is the living menorah. He is the eternal light. He is the eternal light. And so we light the menorah at evening time. We light the menorah at evening time in observance or celebration of the Feast of Dedication, a 7-prong menorah. And as we are lighting this menorah, as we are lighting it at evening time, we should be meditating or speaking it, that and asking Yahuwah to light his menorah within our hearts, to put his eternal light in our hearts, and to never let it be extinguished, to place his menorah in the innermost sanctuary, in the most set apart place of this ha'ikel, and to never let it be extinguished, and to never let it be extinguished. And to close this out with the sut meaning of how we should be keeping it and what should be on our minds is this. Ultimately, family, we are being dedicated. You and I are being dedicated and cleansed for 7,000 years. Hear me. Yahuwah has given us 6 days to work. He has given us 6,000 years to work. On the 7,000th year, that's going to be a Shabbat day, when he gathers us on the Shabbat, when he gathers us on Yom Kippurim, on the year of Jubilee. On the Shabbat day, we're going to rest with him for a day, because a day to Yah is 1,000 years. We're going to have a Shabbat day of rest with him. Understanding that Yahusha, his offering is the offering given for the remission of sin. His offering is given for the remission of sin. His offering is given to reverse the effects of Hashatan. Hashatan is the progenitor of sin. His offering is given to reverse the effects of Hashatan, to take away sin. As it is written in Yahu, the 1st chapter, you shall name him Yahusha, because he shall deliver his people from their sins. We understand that Yahusha is Yahuwah, that Yahusha is Yahuwah, and that we need to separate the offering from, we need to separate the offering from Yahuwah. Yahuwah came in the body of Yahusha. He created a body for himself and deposited his spirit to come as an offering. So we must separate the offering. We must separate the offering. Here is what I mean. Everything, all creation is being reconciled back to Yahuwah through the offering of the body of the Messiah. Everything is being restored back to him, back to Yahuwah, through the offering of the body of Yahusha. Everything. The last thing to be put under his feet is death. The last thing to be put under his feet is death. So you see, even in the millennial reign, Yahuwah will come in the body of Yahusha, because even in the millennial reign, all things are still being restored to him. All things are still being restored to him. All things will not be restored to him until the 8th day, until the last great day. And so even during the millennial rest for 1,000 years, there is still going to be a need for the offering of the body of the Hamashiach, because you see, this is not yet eternity. We do not enter into eternity until the last great day, when time runs out. And so during the 1,000-year millennial rest, this is not eternity. And so death has then not been placed under his feet yet, because even during the 1,000-year reign for the nations, there is still a limit of days. There is still a limit of days. And so then here, death will be the last thing that is put under his feet. And once everything has been put under the feet of the Messiah, once everything has been put under his subjection, in accordance with the writings of Shaul and Corinthians, then he who all things have been subjected to will then subject himself to the Father and subject all things to him. In other words, then Yahuwah will reign and rule in fullness. Then there will be no more need for the offering, because then Yahuwah will reign in fullness. Nevertheless, you and I are being dedicated now through the offering of the body of the Hamashiach for 7 days. For 7 days. For 7,000 years. On the 8th day, we would then be presented to the Father as being clean. As being clean. You see, it's all about this heckle. It's not about some building. It's not about some building. It's all about this heckle, you and I. And so this is how we should be observing the Feast of Dedication. Reading finally from Hazun, or Revelation, the 21st chapter, verse 1 through 22, we read here, "And I saw a renewed Shamayim and a renewed earth, for the former Shamayim and the former earth had passed away." And this is the last great day. This is the 8th day. This is the 8th day. The previous chapter, Hazun 20, talks about the 1,000 years. It talks about the 1,000 years that Hashatan is going to be bound. It talks about the first resurrection. It talks about the 1,000-year Shabbat, the 1,000-year millennial rest. Shabbat meaning rest. So here now we're talking about when the 1,000 years are over, and now we're moving into the 8th day, the last great day, called Simchat Torah with respect to the 8th day of Sukkot, calling Simchat Torah, meaning rejoicing in Torah, meaning on the last great day, we're going to rejoice in the presence of the living Torah, of Yahuwah Al-Yun, So here on the last great day, when time runs out, and there will be no more need for the sun or the moon or the stars, the things that Yahuwah has placed in Shamayim to keep time. to keep time and seasons and days and years. Those things will no longer be required. There's not going to be a sun and a moon and the stars and the renewed Shamayim and a renewed earth, because time will run out. There'll be no more time. We move into eternity. And so here it says, and I saw a renewed Shamayim and a renewed earth, for the former Shamayim and the former earth had passed away. And so we understand here that during the 1,000-year reign, the current earth is still going to be here, and there's still going to be a limit of days, and there's still going to be a need for the offering of the body of the Hamashiach. This is why he is coming back as the Messiah in the body of the Messiah, because his offering is still needed. But after 1,000 years, on the last great day, when everything, including death, has been put underneath his feet, he would then turn over the reign to the Father, to himself, who would then rule and reign in fullness. And I, Yahukanan, saw the set-apart city, renewed Jerusalem, coming down out of the Shamayim from Elohim, prepared as a bride adorned for her husband. And I heard a loud voice from the Shamayim saying, see, the booth of Elohim is with men, and he shall dwell with them, and they shall be his people. He shall dwell with them, and they shall be his people. How is he going to dwell with us? Let's go on. And Elohim shall be with them and be their Elohim. And Elohim shall wipe away every tear from their eyes. And there shall be no more death, nor mourning, nor crying. And there will be no more pain, for the former matters have passed away. And he who was sitting on the throne said, see, I make all matters new. And he said to me, write, for these words are true and trustworthy. And he said to me, it is done. I am the Aleph and the Tau, the beginning and the end, or everlasting covenant. To the one who thirsts, I shall give of the fountain of the water of life without payment. The one who overcomes shall inherit all this, and I shall be his Elohim, and he shall be my son. But as for the cowardly and the untrustworthy and the abominable and murderers and those who whore and drug sorcerers and idolaters and all the false, all you who keep Christmas and Thanksgiving and Easter and Lent, all the false, because all of that is false. Their part is in the lake which burns with fire and sulfur, which is the second death. And one of the second messengers who held the 7 bowls filled with the 7 last plagues came to me and spoke with me, saying, come, I shall show you the bride and the Lamb's wife. And he carried me away in the spirit to a great and high mountain and showed me the great city, the set apart Jerusalem, descending out of the Shamayim from Elohim, having the esteem of Elohim, and her light was like the most precious stone, like a jasper stone, clear as crystal, and having a great and high wall, having 12 gates, and at the gates 12 messengers, and names written on them, which are those of the 12 tribes of the children of YAHUAH'S. There's no 13th gate for Christians. There's no 13th gate for Christians. 3 gates on the east, 3 gates on the north, 3 gates on the south, 3 gates on the west, and the wall of the city had 12 foundations, and on them were the names of the 12 ambassadors of the Lamb. And he spoke with me, and he who spoke with me had a golden measuring rod to measure the city and its gates and its wall. And the city lies 4-cornered, and its length is as great as its breadth. And he measured the city with the rod, 12,000 stadia, the length and the breadth and the height of it are equal. And this is 1,377 miles, if you want to know. 1,377 miles equally, north, south, east, and west. 1,377 miles. And he measured its wall 144 forearms according to the measure of a man, that is, of a messenger. And this is what we're going to be recreated to be. This is going to be our renewed image, our renewed form, which is 216 feet tall. And the structure of its wall was jasper, and the city was clean gold, like clear glass. And the foundations of the wall of the city were adorned with all kinds of precious stones. The first foundation jasper, the second sapphire, the third agate, the fourth emerald, the fifth sardonyx, the sixth ruby, the seventh chrysolite, the eighth beryl, the ninth topaz, the 10th chrysoprase, the 11th jacinth, and the 12th amethyst. And the 12 gates were 12 pearls. Each one of the gates was a single pearl. Listen. And the street of the city was clean gold, like transparent glass. Hear me. And I saw no dwelling place in it. For Yahuwah Al Shaddai is its dwelling place. For Yahuwah Al Shaddai is its dwelling place, and the Lamb, and the Lamb. At this point, there is no dwelling place because one is not needed, because then at this point, we're going to be one with Yahuwah in fullness, one with him, one in him, and he in us, dwelling in him, him dwelling in us in fullness, and there is no need. There will be no need for a dwelling place, just like there is no need for a dwelling place now, which is a foreshadowing of the last great day when there will be no more need for a dwelling place. For a dwelling place. Finally, if we're going to keep this feast, then, and not unlike the other feasts, if we're going to keep it, then we need to ensure that we're keeping it, one, the right way, understanding the sud, and two, we need to keep it on the right days. On the right days. Again, following the Jewish motto is wrong. It is foolishness. It is written in the book of Yubalim, that those who observe the movements of the moon, they were going to observe Yah's set-apart days or his feast days 10 days too soon. 10 days too soon. And in like manner, we see the Jewish model, they're celebrating it 10 days too soon because they follow the movements of the moon. And so in accordance with the Chanukian calendar, if you're going to keep it right, it should be kept from the 13th of December to the 20th of December. This is in accordance with the Chanukian calendar, which is a solar calendar, which is a 360-day calendar, 30-day months, 30 times 12 equaling 360 plus the 4 transitional seasonal days, which makes it a 364-day fixed calendar. And so if we're going to keep the days, we need to keep them at the right appointed time. In the right appointed time, in accordance with the Chanukian calendar as revealed to Enoch, the 25th of the 9th month is the 13th of December, and it goes to, and it lasts through the 20th of December. So I pray that this has been edifying. I pray that your eyes have been open. I pray that now that you will begin to observe this feast and ruach and in truth and not in accordance with the way of the nations, the heathens, the converts. I call them that because they reject the ruach. They reject the ruach. And Yahuwah dwells in the midst of his people. Everybody else outside of his people are called heathen. And so if one doesn't have his set apart ruach, then you are of the nations. Then you are heathen. You are heathen. And so if you reject the ruach, then you're heathen. You're heathen because this is how his people are identified, because he dwells in the midst of his people. Yahuwah barak you and guard you. Yahuwah make his face shine upon you and show favor to you. Yahuwah lift up his face upon you and give you shalom. Thus you shall put my name upon the children of Yasha'al, and I myself shall barak them. So be it, so be it, so be it. Shalom.